Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly AgWeather forecast for Ag South Farm Credit. Well, the big story behind a lot of what we're going to talk about today is the fact that we need rain, right? So for the last 7 days, we've seen just a tremendous amount of precipitation anchor in the middle part of the United States. In fact, over the last 3 days, but the only rainfall that we've been able to get has been coming from the sea breeze, just kicking off some afternoon thunderstorms. And while those have been fantastic, if you've been underneath some of those storms, we've yet to get systems to kind of come through the country and dig into the southeast. They've all been ejecting. So a lot of the severe weather has been in this part of the country, not getting over to the southeast. Look over the last 7 days, though. That repeat of the pattern has driven parts of the midsection of the United States into places that have had 6 to 10 inches of rainfall. We've kind of thrown, everything out of whack for planting a crop here in the Midwest. So after some early quick starts, we're now looking at extended, time period, just waiting to get a corn crop and a soybean crop going. We've had flooding on the western side of the Mississippi River over to the Red River Valley. So parts of our cotton belt have been hit pretty hard with not only a lot of severe weather, but also with a tremendous amount of flooding. You've probably seen it in the news or on your social media feeds, just the sheer amount of flooding going on in this area. And you can see, just for those cotton farmers, I just want to make a point here that we've been able to bring storms back to the Caprock, but we're still missing getting these farther to the west. And speaking of the west, we've been cold, and we need to get some heat into the west in order to change this pattern. And if that pattern changes in the west first, we're going to feel it in the southeast. So bigger picture with all of this, we went from 3 days to 7 days, here's 14 days. Over the last 14 days, we've had more regions throughout Ag South territory that have not seen precipitation than have. And honestly, what we've been getting through here has largely been from isolated thunderstorm events. We're going to start to see this pattern move in a direction that could really relieve that as we go forward and kind of break us away from the risk of this drought continuing to develop, which is going to be important for us. But I want to make a point here. Come back to this area. We have some places that have seen 6 to 10 times their normal amount of rainfall just in the last 2 weeks alone. And this is going to be something that we're going to have to watch going forward. And here's the reason why. I'll be honest with you, through the middle of the month of May, I feel like I have an idea what the pattern's going to do. But beyond that point, really working into our summer time frame, the signals are not there. They're not. And this transition out of El Nino, which is done, over to La Nina, is kind of clouding things up a bit. So while I leave you on this image just to look at where we've been, I want to make a statement about where we're going. And that's this. I'm not confident beyond mid-May. The pace at which El Nino is faded has been quick. La Nina is on its way. But there are some complicating factors moving forward, which has reduced my forecastability of those factors. So what I'm going to tell you is next week's video will be critical to give us a better idea. Here's the reason why. We'll better see the mid-May pattern shift, and I'll have new long-range data from the European model. So what do we know? Well, our newest drought monitor looks like this, and we've now seen the expansion in part of Ag South territory of drought. Now, while the country has dropped in total drought area, we're now down to about 17% of land area in drought in the United States. That does not include this abnormally dry. Okay, that's just D1 through D4. This is the region that's been expanding. Look at the last 2 weeks. There's been no improvement, and there's been some expansion, a one-class degradation in this area. Not well forecast, right? We started to pick up on this about 3 or 4 weeks ago that it's drier and not breaking through, but our soil moisture is beginning to suffer as well. A lot of Virginia, North Carolina, and pockets throughout South Carolina to Georgia have already started to see their subsurface soil moisture down there to around 40 inches really being depleted, while there's been so much flooding that's been happening here. So just kind of stitching this all together, here's a broad brush stroke of what I think the next 10 days does. We still have this same flavor. Systems coming over, diving, ejecting. That's been the problem. There's been high pressure in this area, right? We talked about it a lot last week. What I do see is that high pressure slides a little bit, meaning that this boundary on which the northern and western edge of the high pressure sits, which is a frontal boundary, starts to deliver better moisture. And right now, as it stands, the European model is saying, hey, we've got a good chance at more of Ag South territory picking up above average precipitation than we've had in a while. It really helps, honestly, that the West is getting cold enough to snow. Yeah, honestly, that's a huge part of this, because that means we're going to drop enough cold air to get the jet stream invigorated to roll finally into parts of the southeast. Now, in the near term, what do we've got? Well, yesterday we saw some scattered showers and storms, while huge storms blew up in the central United States. I mean, this has been on just a breakneck pace over the last few weeks of severe weather. In fact, if you take a look at it, we currently stand right now about, well, let's just take a look. The average number of tornadoes through this point, I'm sorry, this is hail. We're a bit behind on hail, but let me go to tornadoes. We're above average on tornadoes. Average would be 519. We're at 563. That's how active the severe weather's been in the midsection of the country. It's not that we haven't had our own severe weather. It's just that it's all been anchored where that flooding is, I've been showing you a bit earlier. We took a quick look at hail, which is above, but take a look at the wind reports here. Hail is below. Hail reports are slightly below, but the wind reports have been above. And what we're going to question is, how does this pattern evolve going forward as we get into these critical months for strong winds from storm systems? So this morning, where are we watching things? Well, notice this first system curling way up here on the Red River of the North is responsible for this larger front, which is going to increase our chances for scattered showers and storms moving through the rest of the day today. The really wet weather is down here. You'll watch this animation fire up one more time here, moving through parts of the south, out of Texas into Louisiana and Arkansas, where there's some strong storms this morning. But here's what our all hazards weather map looks like. And to be honest, the catalyst for change is yet to be seen, but the pattern is going to start to make a bit of a shift. And what I want to know is the next low that's stacked up, which is this guy right here, how does it influence the Midwestern United States? And then eventually, how does this low become a part of a pattern change that's going to establish itself over the Great Lakes about 7 to 9 days from now? So that's where we're going with this. That's what we're going to be on the lookout for. So in the near term, we do have chances for scattered storms today. We have chances for scattered storms tomorrow, but the severe threat's back to the west. Getting into the day on Sunday, still chances for scattered storms, but the majority of our biggest risk is going to be farther to the west with severe weather. By the time we get into early next week, look, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, still staying in this area. So when do our precipitation chances really begin to increase? We've got to start looking at that very closely. So here we go, models. Picking this up about 10 o'clock in the morning here on Friday, May the 3rd. We see scattered storms moving into this region once we work into the afternoon and evening hours. It's the same thing. There'll be sea breeze showers. There will be thunderstorms embedded. We've got the heat. There is moisture, so they're going to pop. But it's not widespread rainfall. See this? The real risk of the severe weather is going to be back in the plains, as we just discussed. Getting into Saturday, this is midday Saturday. Again, a day of isolated thunderstorm events going on here across Georgia, North and South Carolina, getting up to Virginia. While we're not looking at high risk of severe, there are storms coming through Saturday night, getting into Sunday. This is the beginning of trying to break this down. That's good moisture trying to get into key areas that need it. But it's not the widespread rain event, but it's the beginning. So I've been hovering back and forth over Saturday. That's the time frame. Going out there into midday Sunday, we still have these chances for isolated storms, but take a look at this next system coming through here. This is the big one we're going to keep a close eye on. So let me give you some evidence as to where this pattern may go, because I just gave you a hint at this big one. Well, we've had high pressure here for a while. Storm systems have come over the top. They've dove into the west and ejected. And there's, in general, been higher pressure in this area, which is what's directed these storm systems in this direction. What I'm on the lookout for is anything that changes that. So take a look. If we look at where the pattern is now, it's not in the next few days. The deep trough comes into the west. Can you still see the higher heights, the protection from this ridge? That's why this trough stays in the plains and then moves here by the time we get to next Wednesday. But watch what happens after that. By Thursday, Friday, Saturday of next week, we start to see this deeper trough dig in, which means my forecast next week not only includes new long-range information, but we'll know if this finally manifests itself, because this is entirely different from what we've had. This ridge for the last month has been way over here. And this is a whole new look. This is what may break things down, keeping us on the southern side of this trough, giving us better chances for rainfall. I mean, stretching all the way from this part of Texas into our region. This brings in cooler weather. Doesn't bring in cold, but it brings in cooler weather, because you've got coming up in the near term a lot of heat May 9th, 10th, and 11th in this area. We're going to have to watch out for that very carefully. Talking about deep into the 90s. I'll show you those temperatures in a few minutes. All right, given all of that, what do we get? Well, take a look. This is the chance over the next 10 days of grabbing an inch. And across a lot of Ag South territories, especially as you get here into western parts of North Carolina and South Carolina and northern Georgia, those chances are well above 90%. That means moisture is trying to get to us. The chances of getting 2 inches, very high in through this area, but flooding will continue here. Rains return to parts of the Mid-South, and this is just the evidence that that frontal boundary stalls out and we start to get better chances of getting moisture in place. You've now been taken off of the risk of staying under a half inch. All week long, I followed this, and we always had a chance that we were going to stay under a half inch. It's gone. This is what the new pattern seems to be setting up like. So let's get a look at it. Let's go to 5 models. Ready? Artificial intelligence forecast. What do we see? We see pretty wide spread, well, in these shades. That's 3/4 of an inch, to some places picking up to maybe 2 inches. If we then go to looking at what the the National Blend-Up model says, it's got a pretty hard break here where it's expecting over the next 7 days to stay under half inch, but I often don't rely on the NBM to really pick up on fine boundaries like that, especially given what's going on with the sea breeze. So let's go to the WPC, and then let's go to the European model. And now this is what I'm keeping an eye on. Now, some of these models are a bit drier toward the coast, and we've seen that repeated. But remember, we've had the sea breeze kicking off here every day, and this is an area that's seen better moisture as of late. So I'm not overly concerned about it, but the 5th model, by the way, is the GFS, and it's the most generous. So when is this getting here? Whoops, and what does it look like? Sorry, there we go. Starting off with the comparison between the GFS and the European, playing through what we've already seen into this weekend. Look at our chances here. Going into Saturday and Sunday, there are chances. This is just your whole weekend rocking back and forth. I'm really looking at the European. It's got better skill score right now. We've got chances due to lingering frontal boundaries, high pressure off the coast, moisture pumping in, of getting isolated storms all weekend long. We then play into early next week, Monday. Severe weather starts here, but notice we still have chances. So why? What's the difference? The high pressure is now here, closer to Bermuda. All of the last 14 days, it's been much closer to the southeast. So these are your daily scattered storm events that you're going to see in your forecasts every day. So playing forward through Monday, while the severe weather's in the plains, Tuesday into Wednesday. Take a look. This low curls up, leaves a frontal boundary here by Wednesday afternoon and evening, and then it's there by late next week. And that's where we're going to see, right here, see that area I just kind of put inside this oval? High pressure's off the coast, so it's feeding into it. Frontal boundary sits there, and this is what's really starting to increase our precipitation in these areas. So this is getting into next weekend. And by next weekend, the trough now sits in this area. That front comes through and drops the temperatures off, and now we get into a bit of a different pattern. So that's it. That's the big idea going forward over these next 7 to 10 days. By the time you get into week 2, look at this. This is where the flow splits west, trough develops here, and the wet weather we've got, this is really coming on the tail end of May 9, 10, 11, 12. After that, I think we go back over to a little bit of a drier stretch, but this is critical rain that's in the forecast that we need to see manifest itself. How long does it last? Does it get us past this mid-May time frame? That's where things start to get really cloudy. I mean, not cloudy. That's a terrible, terrible word choice there. This is where the confusion comes in. And I'll be honest, I'm not going to go out there and start looking for something when it's not there. The signal's not just there. So I'll give you some evidence, but we'll leave it at this. Temperature-wise, we've been mild. So far in the month of April, we're actually ahead on GDD accumulation. Not way ahead. We've had some cooler days, but this is what it stands. The west is what needs to pick up some heat. Frost risk. This isn't real, by the way. That's not real. But notice I've got no frost risk for you, which is very, very good. In fact, this morning, your overnight lows were quite warm. This is why there was some missing data. That's why that showed up. But take a look. That's Saturday morning lows, Sunday morning lows. Monday, we're staying here 5 to 8 degrees warmer than average on our overnight low temperatures all the way through the next 7 to 10 days. Our high temperatures today, mid to upper 80s. Saturday's back to normal, Sunday normal. Getting into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the heat comes on. And from May 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th, we're going to watch this whole area. There's actually excessive heat risk in this region, which excessive heat in May is talking about temperatures getting well past 90. So this is next Wednesday into Thursday. We're going to keep a close eye on this area for the risk of those very high temperatures. Beyond that, pattern begins to shift. Can you start to see it up here? Take a look. Even though we accumulate all of this heat in the next 7 days, these are GDDs over the next 7 days, So 150 in Virginia, all the way up to 182, 184 in southern parts of Georgia. The cool down starts to show up in the day 5 through 10 time period, and by day 10 through 15, it's over us. But it's just cool. It's not cold, it's just cool. Why? The jet stream has built up into a ridge here, broader trough over this area, subtropical comes in underneath it, and we just break the heat. But we've got some heat coming in the near term. So what's changed? What's going to happen mid-month? This. All week long, we watched the models build in throughout the time period of May 7 to June 7, higher pressure here. This, remember a few moments ago I showed you, was way over here for much of April. So that's what's changing the pressure, giving us lower pressure and a different pattern going forward. Now, the models are not resolving this well. That's what their precipitation outlook is from May 7 to June 7. And don't buy it. I don't buy it. It's too much of a persistence bias in this pattern. But we have to look at it because it's something to look at. But why? What's the problem? The problem is this. I have no strong signals from any of our global teleconnections that go beyond about 7 to 8 days that I can rest on, like the MJO collapses again. That's usually the one I like to use to figure it out, but it's collapsed. So our government said, they released this on April 30th, their forecast for the month of May. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's going to look brilliant over the next 10 days because that's what the first 10 days of May is going to look like. I'm just saying that the last 20 days, we might get a different signal out of this entirely. It's going to be very challenging. Before I leave this page, I do want to show you that if you look at their risk of hazardous temperatures, I just want you to see that May 10th, 11th, maybe 12th, we're going to have to watch out for some pretty hot temperatures down here, which we already just discussed. So what's the source of the lack of predictability? Ocean temperatures are are giving us one teleconnection to use. We've gone cooler in this area. We've stayed hot here. El Nino gone, La Nina showing up. And the cooler water off the west coast, plus this warm blob that's moving north of Hawaii, tells me that we're in a transition time period, and I cannot see beyond the middle of this month with any clarity. So we'll wait. That's okay. Next week, now that we've seen what the next 7 to 10 days could be, next week we may have a better idea on this, plus I get new model data to give you a much better look at it. But from here, I do need to give you a quick global update. Temperatures throughout much of Russia, very, very cold right now. This is hitting part of the winter wheat belt in this region. It's quite hot down here in parts of South America where the monsoon has completely shut itself off. And if you look over the next 10 days, very dry here while flooding continues in southern Brazil. That's becoming a pretty important story. Could we get some moisture into parts of the Russian wheat belt? Yes, but this region right here has stayed dry. And there's a lot of folks in there concerned about what that's doing to wheat. We've been wet south of the Yangtze River. There's better rains. These are autumn rains coming into New South Wales, Queensland. They need these rains pretty badly. So I just want to show you that and then focus on South America briefly. Because the flooding that's gone on down here in parts of Rio Grande do Sul, you can fit, I think, 2 North Carolinas inside of Rio Grande do Sul. This is a big place. They have some places that have picked up 500 millimeters of rain in the last 2 weeks alone, while the monsoon shut off farther to the north. And over the next 10 days, it doesn't come back. We're on to the dry season. We're about 2 to 3 weeks early on it, but we're there while flooding remains in those same key areas. So we just want to bring you up to speed on those international things. I very much look forward to seeing the new data this weekend, and I'll present it to you next Friday in our forecast video. But with that, I'm going to leave you here. You know what I'm watching in the next couple of weeks. Keep an eye on it with me. I appreciate your attention. Have a good one. Thanks.